Parliament na say ya goodie sa enkwada no edoso. The movement for change for ebese parliamentarians etiase se omunni omunwuma omunye omunwuma te se mpanimfo ade omako so omoko akoya moman no akonanim nyese de bia ye kwa na ye kwa akobubu nkunya any table. Parliament na National Democratic Congress enya nipa dodo na ne MPP nya nipa kuma bi wo ho no na ye free se power na akodi NDC for sem enu nti no o mbetimi de diguma yi na say ya agudie sa enkwada agoro no edoso enu nti movement for change for ebese parliamentarians etiase se wo munni omunwuma omunye omunwuma te se mpanimfo ade omako so omoko akoya moman no akonanim nyese de bia ye kwa na ye kwa akobubu nkunya any table. Etoso mienu movement for change say ya da omampani Jomama se oka so obefa nipa eduasia 60 as ministers are so far no de ede nyina kire se nipa 60 no obetumi afa sanso wabo nipa 56 din sanso ye de se wode nkokora ne mebunu abomu a omu ye adwuma ye ka che omampani John Mahama ene na pamfo ne se nyese de maam no ye ka kire mu se munkodi na mo nkohe se sika ye de be hye mo nsa ne o man na japade ni amode be ya adwuma na abo man no bra na ma ohia atu afiri o man mu ye mebunu a enya school papa nko no wo mo a e de o mafu eto fo man sa na o matworo no omo so enya so mfaso. Movement for change say ade a eye chiwade kura ne ketasehye kro no a adokroye na ye hu se OSP and as the office of the special prosecutor special prosecutor na kasa ashase etu anamon bia wo pese odi hu dwuma ye ne ensusue mu no se ne ye campaign ye ka kire mu amantie no enso still ye nim se daache mu betie no ya de ne ase ye de ade bia fe na corruptions a wono no won show bia se otumi a ohun secretary bi ebon ho a wotam wa na wono adi wasem fast tie ni so mampani ye koye nim no obehwe so ye sanso ahye OSP say enyamba idie eye wono mo a wato nsafre oro eye oru akene ofori ata no ene wo mo akeka ho nyina no wo momodin anse sansem ne be ye firi o because Ghana sike bia yira na ye ntwumenye sa no action no talk ye kasanko ano movement say eye chiwade ebio constitutional reforms mo be kaya ye ka kire mo se ye mra bona ye didi dwuma no chima bi wo ho editi ye sa kai o mampani ye nyina ya we se wate abegyaku a wo so mo nkɔhwem ena no ora jo Professor Mills by wo TB ewie na $6.3 million ko angosiaga ora kufu ado bae ono so be TB 3 million Ghana cedis angosiaga emprempre de ye mpese ye betese wenu mo anso aba no ekoye economy ya mfa anya adwuma bia movement say ye pese ye hu so mu wie a omudwumadie no ebetumi aboa ama constitutional reforms no aba bedu economy ni so no movement ahehye nyoma kama ye de afutu no ema owura mama mo bekaya owini na election no movement ye penny owura lanchemate bo anan ekochia no okoe one consider the position and one surrender ska na momokoja no the great transformational plan no the entity of this great transformational plan no ko share nsa ne se emu na nsem de no be bia Ghana ye takela ye mfa ye ho nko IMF mu bio no ye de ewumtia no movement na kire mu se sika ebeba ne nsem no onfa nko hye mia bia bi te se agriculture nyuma envididwuma ene de keka ho na be manuane ne nyuma ayedai aba na importer anase nyoma dodo ye krafiri amano ne de ba emma yesidi no enya hode no ezo ayedai etumi atwa movement isanso aka se ora kenofori atane na bank of fa de bia ne ye frɛ the compound calculation of VAT mo amoye business in the munim say ye di NHI esa ka gross ho ni aka bo ma san ya be apply VAT no eno na ema port nkofo kura ntunyi enyi omo nyoma e okromu a movement say o man no ora mahama no apamfo yesra mu ntwa saa de nim na be ya VAT na ye 15% ni mom ye nye 17% na ye nyim free NHI no eho se de be ya nipa ho be dey e be ya na mom ye maintain sa 3% flat rate na ye de edi dwuma no ne kura movement say galamsey mo aye monim sem ye kwoto aba na no ade ba ko a e ma Ghana fo no to aba dodo na ma wura mama eye yensu a ye sen ye nsase a ye sen no omo ba ye hu se o tu ho anamo me ma no me ye se anofafa ye hwe nanim esan se ye no wanko galamsey a movement ye begina ye na so na yakko na ama Ghana fo enwo ato mo eno nti no we ani abon to fa aye nim se mokọ a sa na mbeka no mo mfa bi nka ho ye be questions are free eti4.
I wish first on behalf of the leadership of the movement for change to express our profound gratitude to you for responding to our invitation to attend this press conference. As one of the leading political forces in our country, we consider it appropriate and indeed a moral responsibility to express our views on current and emerging issues dominating our political landscape. The movement has followed with keen interest developments in Ghana following the conclusion of the 2024 general elections and the subsequent installation of a new government led by the NDC, and would like to make the following observations. 1, dynamics in Parliament. The unprecedented supermajority in Parliament gained by the NDC, without doubt, signaled the potential imbalance in the architecture of power in Parliament. Very much different from the dynamics of the hand Parliament under the 8th Parliament of the 4th Republic. Be that as it may, the nature of hostilities and rancorous conduct that has so far characterized parliamentary proceedings, including but not limited to the vetting of political appointees, must be a source of concern for all those who have a genuine interest in safeguarding our democratic credentials. While it is expected that the minority in Parliament, led by the MPP, will hold the majority by extension, the ruling government to account, which to a large extent they seem to be doing with some admiration, it is important that they do so without grandstanding and a disruptive posture. Democracy is not all about disagreement. It is essentially about agreeing to disagree. The majority, on the other hand, must exercise their superpower with discretion and demonstrate full commitment to the principles of accountability and transparency. 2, on appointments to key positions in government and the public sector, the president must be commended for living up to his commitment to establish a lean government. Reducing the number of ministerial appointments to a maximum of 60 is without doubt a significant policy shift and a potential game changer, particularly in terms of its signaling effect and impact. The reduction in the number of ministries and consolidation of same must result in further cuts in public expenditure. In addition, the quality of appointments made so far, to a large extent, demonstrates a commitment to infuse new energy, dynamism, efficiency, and innovation in government business. The era of Team B seems to be over. Our hope, though, is for the new appointments not to be obsessed with the trappings and arrogance of power, which will consign them to the same fate as faced by some of their predecessors. It is also worth mentioning that the delicate balance of maintaining both regional and gender balance in the appointment has to a large extent been achieved, albeit with room for further improvement. Furthermore, the speed with which the appointments have been made from a historical context is worthy of commendation. 3, corruption. The canker of corruption is without doubt one of the significant challenges confronting our nation. All governments in our recent history as a nation have spoken with fervor about stamping out corruption. And yet, as a people, we have made very little progress in dealing substantively with the problem of corruption. It is against this background that we must evaluate the efforts by the current government in combating the scourge of corruption by first establishing the oral team. This, coupled with the recent pronouncements and actions of the Office of the Special Prosecutor, may seem to be a new aggressive approach towards dealing with corruption. The cases currently being investigated by the OSP, including the ones affecting the Minister of Finance, Ken Ofuriatta, have been in the public domain for some time now. The move by the OSP will offer the said political appointees an opportunity to defend and acquit themselves using due process or face the full rigors of the law. The tendencies for the acts or omissions of selected officials to be used as a smear campaign against all politicians must be frowned upon. In spite of these early efforts by government and the OSP referred to above, aimed at dealing with corruption, one would caution that in order not to fall into the same pit as previous governments, which has led to a netto paradigm in Ghana on tackling corruption. And netto simply means no action, talk only. It is the considered opinion of the Movement for Change that a more comprehensive, robust, and institutionalized approach to dealing with corruption must be adopted. As indicated in the Great Transformational Plan, GTP, of the Movement for Change, there are 6 practical policy measures that must be considered in tackling corruption. 1, creation of an anti-corruption czar, or Caesar, with full constitutional backing. Under the current system where the Office of the Special Prosecutor is established by law, but lacks constitutional backing, political influence can hinder the anti-corruption efforts of the OSP. In this regard, the GTP proposes the establishment of an independent anti-corruption czar with prosecutorial powers protected under the Constitution and separate from the powers granted to the Attorney General by the Constitution. This office would therefore replace the current Special Prosecutor's establishment and be truly immune from political interference. As an independent constitutional body, such an office must be fully resourced, taking into consideration the amount of money that can be saved as a result of the work of the Anti-Corruption Czar. 2, a unified and strengthened Anti-Corruption Act. The GTP proposes the consolidation of all existing anti-corruption related legislation into one comprehensive enabling legal framework to deal with corruption, and that will define without ambiguity the nature, scope, and content of all corruption and corruption-related activities, and also ensure that very stringent and non-negotiable penalties are prescribed for political appointees and other political sector officials and civil servants who are cited and indicted for corruption. Currently, various bodies and institutions, by their instruments of establishment, lay claim to having legal powers to investigate cases of corruption. These include the OSP, IOCO, Shiraj, the Police Service, CID, and the National Security. Everybody's work is nobody's work. 3, compulsory asset declaration and lifestyle audits. Political officials, and not just political appointees, would be required by law to undergo periodic, thorough asset declarations with real-time lifestyle audits to track unexplained wealth. 4, transparent procurement systems. The GTP proposes reforms in procurement laws to eliminate the incidence of collusion, political patronage, and cronyism, ensuring that contracts are awarded on merit and not based on political or other considerations. 5, empowering citizens and civil society to be watchdogs against corruption. The GTP proposes the introduction of an anti-corruption citizen Charter, legally mandating whistleblower protection and incentivizing citizens to report acts of corruption. It also proposes incentives and other forms of support to civil society organizations in enhancing advocacy against corruption. These measures would ensure that no government official or political appointee, regardless of their status, would be able to use the color of their office to manipulate the government machinery and political system for good gain, for personal gain. Now, the fourth issue is constitutional reforms. The lack of progress in implementing constitutional reforms, which have been extensively debated by various sections of the Ghanaian society, is an indictment on all previous governments. It is refreshing to note that the president has very early on in his administration empaneled a committee of very distinguished personalities, many of them known for their passion and commitment to the reform process. And equally important are recognized for their professional integrity and independence of thought. It is our fervent hope that their recommendations will not be buried within the corridors of power. It is worth noting that the GTP of the movement contains a comprehensive set of proposals for constitutional reform, including but not limited to the establishment of a government of national unity and the establishment of a second chamber of parliament, all with a view to promoting a more inclusive and decentralized governance architecture. Now, fifth is the economy. The Minister for Finance has indicated that he proposes to present the 2025 budget statement and government's economic policy by the middle of March, whilst commending the minister for his efforts to meet the constitutional requirement of representing the budget before the 31st of March. The movement would like, among other things, to advise as follows. 1. The ministry must undertake a complete overhaul of the architecture of the national budget, focusing first on ensuring macroeconomic stability, anchored on the two pillars of fiscal consolidation and tight monetary policies, working in consultation with the Bank of Ghana. 2, prioritizing catalytic investment in the investment in the productive sectors of the economy, namely agriculture, industry, and tourism, as against investments in social services and infrastructure development. 3, providing a cocktail of fiscal and non-fiscal incentives to leverage financing and investments from the private sector, particularly to support infrastructural development in roads, bridges, water delivery, and sanitation services. This should include attracting private sector participation in the full gamut of the energy sector, from generation, transmission, and distribution. It is worth noting that these policy measures will require a review of the current Exemptions Act, which is a disincentive to the attraction of private capital. 4, negotiating with the independent power producers, IPPs, in the energy sector on a debt equity swap policy that will give them a stake in the private sector consortium that will partly own and manage the energy sector assets of government. 5, abolishing some of the nuisance taxes, including the e-levy, betting tax, COVID levy, and fumigation levy, to replace the shortfall in revenue that will be occasioned by the removal of the above-named taxes and to optimize government revenue in general. The ministry should effect an increase in VAT from the current 15% to 17%, but separate the calculation of VAT from the NHIL and GET fund in order to avoid compounding the calculation of the taxes and levies. The anticipated reduction in public expenditure arising from the reduction in the number of ministries and the number of ministers will contribute to closing the revenue gap. In addition, the aggressive efforts to reduce the incidence of corruption in public service will also save government additional revenue loss. 6, retain the current 3% flat tax paid by MSMEs with a specified turnover and eliminate the additional 3% charge as distributors' margin. 7, as an expenditure control policy measure, and to support government's fiscal consolidation efforts, review the implementation of all existing government flagship programs with a view not to discontinue them, but to reduce government's financial exposure to the programs and make them more financially sustainable. 8, initiate the implementation of government's 24-hour economic policy, starting with enterprises under the One District, One Factory, that is the 1D1F program. 9, the stabilization of the local currency is of the prime importance in maintaining a healthy economy. In this regard, whilst working towards a more robust and comprehensive medium to long-term solution, particularly in the area of boosting exports and enhancing import substitution, the ministry should introduce some short-term policy interventions designed to regulate demand and supply of foreign exchange. In this regard, government should suspend with immediate effect until further notice the operation of all Forex Bureau and mandate all Forex transactions to be conducted through the commercial banks and the Bank of Ghana. In addition, government's existing regulations on the retention of Forex from export revenue must be strictly enforced. 10, the Ministry of Finance should work with the Bank of Ghana to progressively bring down the central bank policy rate to induce and stimulate a reduction in interest rates. 11, the Ministry of Finance should work with the Ministry of Agriculture and Ministry of Trade, Industry and Agribusiness to introduce short-term policy measures to reduce food inflation, which will have a corresponding effect on reducing the level of inflation in general. 12, the government should review with immediate effect the taxes, duties, levies, and charges at the ports with a view to reducing same, which will be an incentive for enhanced compliance in the payment of duties and also contribute to a reduction in the level of imported inflation, since Ghana is still highly import-dependent economy. It is worth noting that the GTP has some detailed policy recommendations on all the proposals outlined above. The 6th point is on galamsey and the protection of the environment. Government is yet to demonstrate with clarity its policy recommendations on dealing with galamsey. This is a source of great concern, considering the fact that galamsey poses an existential threat not only to the environment, particularly our water bodies and forest reserves, but indeed also to the efficient and effective management of the country's natural resources. Again, the GTP has a comprehensive policy blueprint on this matter. It is time for action, ladies and gentlemen. I do hope that the issues raised in this press conference and the solutions proposed will go a long way to support government's resetting agenda. Ghana first. Ghana will definitely rise again. Thank you, and may God bless you.